Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's After Effects scripting tutorial. This week is going to be special as we have a cool project that we're going to be coding today, and that is a beat editor. No, not something you edit your cool beats with, it's something that After Effects automatically edits videos according to your beats with. So the basic way this script works is you import all of your video and images you want in the video, as well as any audio files you may want. Then run the script, select which track you want to edit to, choose whether you want to include images, and set the edit speed, which is 1 being super short cuts and 10 being really long cuts. So if we set it to like 3 and click on edit, it's going to go through and add and automatically scale and do the appropriate things that we need to all of our footage. So as you can see, it's generated almost 300 layers for us. And let's take a look at a previous example that I did that looks pretty cool. Alright, and just realize that that was all created with this script. No adjustments done to the code or any post-editing. So let's go ahead and get started. You might want to grab a snack or a drink or something because this is going to be a long one with about 260 lines of code. So to get started, we're just going to load up extend script here, and this is what we're going to be making. We'll start a new JavaScript file and zoom in a little bit here. First thing I'm going to do is just call this the beat detector because that's kind of what it does, but not really. And then we're going to set up our global variables, and inside of here we're just going to do some standard ones like a variable for our project, which is equal to app.project, a variable for a composition, which is going to be equal to the active item, a variable for the solids folder. In the original example I created a variable for the solids folder, which you may or may not use for your project. Then we're going to create 2 arrays, one called the audio array, set that equal to brackets, and one called audio array names. One of these is going to contain our audio files, and then this one's going to contain their names. So let's start off by setting up our UI here. We'll call this the main UI. To start, we'll make a var called main window, and we'll set that equal to a new window. It's going to be a palette type. We'll call it beat editor or something like that, and undefined size. Then we'll grab our main window, and we'll set the orientation to column from top to bottom. I'm just going to make this so that we can see the script here while we're working. So we're going to want to create a group for this audio text, this drop down, and the question button. So to do this, we're just going to call this group, and we'll set this equal to our main window. And we're going to add a group with undefined properties for size and call it group. And since we're going from left to right on this one, we're going to set the group orientation to row, and then inside of here we can start with some static text telling us that this is the audio dropdown. So we'll just say group.add, and we'll add some static text with undefined size, and we'll call this audio with a colon. And we don't really need a variable for this text because we're not going to be changing it, but if you wanted it to be dynamic and maybe change as you select a different option here, you would just need to set up a variable for that. And now we're going to set up a check for files. And with this, we're going to implement a for loop to run through everything over here in our project panel. And with this, we're going to grab all the footage and songs. So we're just going to say for var I equals 1. I is less than or equal to our project and the number of items in it, and increment by 1. And inside of here, we're going to set up 2 if statements. The first one, we're going to be checking for audio files. So we'll check if app.project and the current item we're going through, if it has audio, and that's true, which means the item has audio, obviously. And we're also going to check if the current item we're on has video, and that doesn't equal true. Then this is obviously an audio file. So now that we have our conditional defining an audio file, if we find any item that's like this, we're going to take our audio array and we're going to push in app.project and item I, or the current item. And then we're going to grab our audio array names. Inside of that, we're going to push the same item, app.project.itemi, and we're going to push in the name here. The reason we have one for just the files themselves and one for names is because we need names to populate this audio dropdown here. In our second if statement, we're going to check if something's an instance of a folder item. Again, we're going to be using the solids folder for this. You don't have to use this, but you can. We're going to say if app.project.itemi is an instance of a folder item, and app.project.itemi.name, so the name of the folder, is equal to solid. And if this is true, we're just going to grab the solids folder variable and set it equal to this item here. Alrighty, so now that we have our audio files, we can go ahead and move on to this dropdown where we're going to be putting them. So we're going to set up a variable called audio dropdown, which is going to be this dropdown here with our names. And this is going to be equal to our group, and we're going to add a dropdown list with undefined size. And inside of this, instead of passing through a bunch of strings to fill it up with, we're just going to take our audio array names, and that's going to automatically populate it. Then for this audio dropdown, we're going to set the default selection equal to 0. So this will automatically select the first element in there. And then I also want to change the size, because basically if you have a really long file name, it's going to fill up this entire UI. So we're just going to constrain it a little bit. I found that a width of 120 and a height of 25 works well. And then we'll create this little question mark info button here, which will allow us to do our images. For this, we'll set up a var called info button, and this is equal to group, and we're going to add a button with undefined size, and the text is just going to be a question mark. Then, so it's not a huge button, we're going to grab the info button .size, and we'll set that to 25 by 25. All right, now if I go ahead and grab our main window and center it, and then our main window and show it, you can see we have our basic UI set up here. We just need to create the other groups here. All right, so the next group is going to be with our slider, which is going to adjust the speed of the editing. So we're going to start off by creating a group. We'll just call this group 1 because we didn't really name the other one that. And this is equal to our main window.add. Going to add a group, undefined size, and call it group 1. And good practice is to set the orientation as well, and we'll set it to row. And then inside of here, the first thing we need to add is this edit speed text. So we'll grab group 1 and we'll add static text with undefined size, and it's going to say edit speed. Now we can set up our actual slider here. We'll just call it the speed slider. We'll set that equal to group 1, and we're going to add a slider, undefined size, and we'll set the default value to 1. Now we need to set up the range of our slider, which I think by default is 1 to 100 or something, but we want to make sure we're not getting any decimals, and we only have 1 to 10 available. So to do this, we'll grab our speed slider. We'll initially set the value to 1, because that's what we put as here as a string. Then we'll grab the speed slider and set the min value, or the minimum value it can be, to 1. And then the speed slider max value, which we want to be 10. Now it won't go anywhere beyond 1 or 10. And then we're actually going to need some dynamic text for over here, which is going to display what the current slider value is. So we'll create a variable called speed slider text, and this is going to be equal to group 1. We're going to add some static text, undefined size, and we're actually going to assign this the 1 rather than our speed slider. My apologies. And now we need to set up a function for every time we change the speed slider, this guy right here, we need to change this text here to be the same. So the simple way to do this is to type in speed slider, which is our actual slider object, and we're going to say on change rather than something like on click. And that's going to be equal to a function, and this function is simply going to say our speed slider text dot text is going to be equal to our speed slider dot value. So anytime we change our speed slider here, this text over here is going to be equal to this speed slider value. But as you can see, if we get to 10, it's cut off. So let's go ahead and grab our speed slider text, and we'll set the size of that to be a little bit wider. Let's go with something like 50 by 25. And as you can see, it's now displaying a lot of decimals. So one way to fix that is to grab the value we're applying to our text here and we're going to say math.floor that value. And what that's going to do is go ahead and round it for us. So anytime we go, it's going to be a round number for us. And that's going to be important once we start writing the functionality of the script, because if we pass through like 3.5, it's going to mess up our loops. And then finally, let's finish off this main UI window here. We'll create one last group called group 2. Set this equal to the main window, and we're going to add a button, and we're going to add a group, obviously, undefined size, and we'll call this group 2. And we're just going to call the button, and we'll set that equal to group 2. We'll add a button with undefined size, and we'll call this edit. And now we have our script, or at least our main script, finished. Anytime we change our speed, it's going to change appropriately. And now we just need to add implementation for these two buttons here. So we'll go ahead and go below our main window show here. And we're going to first grab our info button and add the functionality to that. So our info button, anytime we on-click it or click on it, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to grab our about window and show it. We haven't created the about window yet, but that will be the window that allows you to include images. So to make this, we're just going to say about UI. We'll create a var called about window, and we'll set this equal to a new window. Just like before, we'll set it to be a palette. We'll call it the about window, and we'll set the size to undefined. And I'm also going to pass a fourth argument, not allowing you to close it. So we'll say close button is false inside of these brackets here. So we're first going to set our about window orientation to be column from top to bottom. Then we're going to want to add a first group to this. So we'll just call it about one, and we'll add this to the about window, and it's going to be a group with undefined size and called about one. We'll set the orientation for about one to be row. And now let's go ahead and add our elements in here. We're going to add a var called include images, and this is going to be equal to about one, and we're going to add this time a checkbox with undefined size, and the text for this is just going to say include images, and we'll set the default value for our checkbox to be 0 or unchecked. And then lastly, we'll create a second group called about two and add that to our about window as a group with undefined size and about two. We'll set the orientation of about two equal to row. And finally, we'll add a variable called close button, which is going to be equal to about two. And we're going to add a button, again, undefined size, and this is going to say close. We need to make sure we don't get the button and close button confused because they each do different things. So we need to add functionality to this close button. So we're going to say close button, and when we click on it, it's going to equal a function that does something. And all it's going to do is grab the about window and hide it. Alright, so now our script should be fully functioning. We have our about window where we can include images and close it. And if we close it with it checked, it should retain that information. Now the main part is this edit button, which is going to be the beef of the code. So if you're not exhausted already, you might want to grab another snack, take a break, but we're going to just dive straight into it here. And to do that, we're going to grab our button and set an onClick function. And inside of here again is going to be the meat of everything we're doing. We're going to start by creating a undo group. So once we go through and click on this button, we can undo everything if we need to. So I'll say app.begin undo group, and we'll call this editing, and then we'll say app.end undo group. And there's a couple of variables we're going to want to set up in here. The first of which is going to be our audio layer, or the selected audio layer. And to get this, we're going to set audio layer equal to our audio array, which has all of our audio files in it. And we're going to want to grab the index of the actual selection in here. So we're going to say the audio array, and for the index, we're going to grab our audio dropdown, the selection, and the index of that selection. Then we'll need to set up a layer called edit comp. This is going to be equal to our project.items, and we're actually going to add a composition here. The first argument we're going to pass through is the name. And to do this, we're going to grab our audio array names and grab the index of our audio dropdown. So that will basically grab whatever name of these we have selected and set it equal to the comp name. And we're also, because this is an array, going to set it to toString. Then we have the width value, the height value, the pixel aspect ratio, the duration, which we're going to set equal to our audio layer dot duration. That way it's just the length of our audio. And finally the frame rate. And then just so we can open it up and see it, we're going to grab our edit comp and open it in the viewer. And now we're going to reference our first outside function we're about to create. This is going to be called add audio file. And we only need to pass 2 arguments through for this. The first of which is the audio layer we're adding. And the second is the comp we're adding it to. So we're just going to pass audio layer and edit comp in. Then down below our button.onClick, we'll set up a function called add audio file. And to pass through our 2 arguments, we're just going to call the first one audio layer and the second one comp. And inside of here, we're just going to do 2 simple things. The first one, we're going to grab our comp and the layers, and we're going to add our audio layer to that. And then we're going to execute the convert audio to keyframes function on our audio file. So we'll say app.execute command. And inside of here, we're going to say app.find menu command ID. And this ID is called convert audio to keyframes. So what this is going to do, first we're going to set up our audio layer, then our comp layer. We're going to open up our comp and then go into a function called add audio file, where we're taking our audio file and comp, and we're adding our audio file directly into the composition. And then with that on top, we're going to convert that audio file to keyframes. Now, the reason we want to convert our audio to keyframes is because with a waveform in After Effects, we can't actually extract any of the data unless it is keyframes. So when we have actual keyframe data, we can convert a waveform into a giant list of data points that we can manipulate and then use to edit our video. So now that we're done with add audio file, we're going to go ahead and head back up here below it, and we're going to be manipulating our new layer created when we convert the audio to keyframes. So we'll set 2 variables up, one called left and one called right. This is going to be equivalent to the left and right channel sliders that are created in this audio amplitude null. And the reason we're using left and right and not just both channels is because algorithmically later in the code, we're going to be implementing a function that basically combines the left and right audios and determines the sort of intensity of the sound, and this will help us to find the cut points later. So for our left variable, we're going to set this equal to our edit comp, which is just going to be this comp it generates. And because we just added the audio amplitude layer, it's going to be layer 1. So we're going to grab layer 1. And then we're going to say .effects capitalized, and we're going to look for the property called left channel and the property for the slider, which is basically going to grab all of these slider values that we can see in this graph here. And then for the right, we're going to do the same exact thing, edit comp.layer1. We're going to go into the effects, look for the property this time called right channel, and then grab the slider property values within that. Now we're going to set up what we're going to define as a second, because most of the time in this script we're going to be dealing with frames rather than seconds. We need to have something that we can sort of multiply or divide by to get certain values. So we'll create a variable called second, and we'll set this equal to our edit comp.framerate. And what we're going to do then is math.floor to round that frame rate. Now we're going to set up a couple more variables before we get into the main functionality here. The first one called num samples, the next one called num passes, and then cut points. So the way this is basically going to work is once we have all of this data here, we're going to try and section it off into different sections, analyze the intensity of that entire section compared to the sections next to it. And if one of those sections has a certain threshold, like 40% change in volume, then we'll want to cut there. So basically our number of samples is going to be the number of frames we're analyzing. So for num samples, we'll set this equal to our edit comp.duration, which is going to return how many seconds it is. And then we're going to multiply that by edit comp.framerate minus 1. And we're going to put this all in parentheses because we're going to round that as well. So this is going to round our duration over composition times the frame rate minus 1, which is basically going to give us the number of samples that we're going through. Then for the number of passes, this is how many times we're going to run through and check for these edit points. This is going to be equal to, again, math.round. And this time we're going to grab the num samples and divide it by a second. Then our cut points, this is going to be the actual points in time in which we cut the video. You can imagine there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, which is true. So we're going to set cut points equal to a function, which is called detect blocks, which sounds like a cryptocurrency thing, but I assure you, we're not stealing your hash power. So let's go ahead and define this detect blocks function down here. Inside of the arguments we're going to pass, we're actually passing quite a few through. So let's go ahead and pass through our edit comp, which we'll need to reference, our left, right, num passes, and second. Now inside of our detect blocks function, this is going to be the majority of the difficult part of this tutorial, because we're going to be calculating some values using some interesting math. So we need to get the arguments in here. First one we'll just call the comp, left, right, passes, and second. Inside of here we're going to want to set up a couple of variables up front. The first one is going to be the current second, which we're going to set equal to 0 because we start at 0 seconds. Then we're going to create an array called left block array. We're going to create one called right block array, another array called beat frames, and one more array called block averages, and then two other variables called calculated change and temp average. Our current second is going to be the current second we're analyzing. Our left and right block arrays are going to be containing some data from our actual audio amplitudes. Our beat frames are going to be the actual frames in which we think the beat's occurring, so that's where we can cut. So let's go ahead and set up a for loop to loop through all of our data here. Believe it or not, we're actually going to have two more for loops inside of this for loop. So we'll set it up by saying var e equals 1. We'll set e less than or equal to passes and increment e by 1. Then we're going to grab our block averages array and set it equal to nothing, just to make sure it's clear if we've gone through it a couple times. And we're going to now set up our second for loop. So this first loop is going to be going through the number of passes, or basically how many sections we have. It's going to go through each one of those. Then for our second for loop, we'll say var ee equals our current second. So it's going to start off equaling 0. And then we'll say ee is less than or equal to e times a second. And then we're going to increment ee by 1. So this is going to start ee off at 0 and go up until it's equal to e, the current pass, times a second. Basically, this is going to confine it to analyze the beginning and end of any of our blocks. So inside of here is the main majority of our code. We're going to grab our left block array, and inside of this we're going to push something. What we're going to push is we're going to grab our left layer, or our left property, which references our slider here, and we're going to get the value at time, and the time we're going to get the value at is ee divided by a second and false. Then we're going to do the same thing for the right block array, except this time we're going to grab right, and we're going to get the value at time ee divided by a second. The reason we set it to false is that so it doesn't return any values when we push it, and the reason we're using left or right dot value at time is because this is going to go through each time that we need to analyze it and get the data. Then we're going to grab our temp average variable, and we're going to set this equal to, in parentheses, our left block array, and we're going to grab index ee, or the current one it's on, and we're going to add this to our right block array, and again index ee, the current index. And then outside of these parentheses we're going to divide this by 2, so we're basically getting the average intensity between the left and right channels. Then we're going to get block averages, and we're going to push something into this as well, simply our temp average that we're currently on. Alright, are you tired of for loops? Because we're doing one more embedded inside of here. One more for loop. For this one we'll use a variable like q, set that equal to 0, and we're going to say q is less than our block averages dot length Q++. So we're going to go from 0 to the number of averages we've calculated. Inside of here, we're going to set our calculated change variable equal to a complicated algorithm. It's going to start off with math.abs, which stands for math.absolute value. That way we don't get any negative numbers. And we're going to go ahead and start off with 3 opening parentheses here. We're going to say calculate average block averages minus our block averages index Q into parentheses, and we're going to divide all that by our calculate average and pass through our block averages, and we're going to multiply that by 100. All right, so the way this is basically working is calculated change is going to equal the absolute value of a function that we're about to create called calculate average, and we're going to be passing through our block averages to get these values. So down below here, let's create a function called calculate average, and inside of here we're just going to pass through a variable which was the block averages, and we're just going to call this the average array in this function. We're going to create a variable called average and set that equal to 0 because that's going to be the current average, and then a for loop here. I'll set variable I equal to 0, and for I is less than our average array, the length of it, we're going to increment I by 1. So this is going to go from 0 all the way up to how many averages we've calculated. And we're going to set average equal to average plus our average array index I. So this is going to set average equal to itself plus the current average we're on. Then outside of our for loop here, we're going to grab average again and set it equal to average divided by our average array dot length, and this is basically going to give us the divided average out. And finally, we need to return a value so we can calculate the change up here. So we're just going to return average. Alrighty, so back up in our calculated change, we now have our calculate averages. And basically each time we want to get this calculate change, we're going to run through the calculated average function and do some math to basically get the average of all of the intensity averages of our audio files. Hopefully that makes sense because it made sense about 3 months ago. All right, and we're going to actually stay inside of our for loop here, and we're going to be adding the sort of crowning jewel of all this code. What we're going to do is we're going to grab an if statement here. And for the check, we're going to check the calculated change, which we just calculated here. And we're going to say if calculated change is greater than 40, then we're going to grab our beat frames array and we're going to push EE. We're also going to set our block averages to nothing. So this is basically our threshold. Anytime the calculated change from one data point to the next is greater than 40 in this case, we're going to set our beat frames value here to be the basically current frame we're on. So anytime the audio changes to whatever number you put in here, if it's greater or less than a certain number, we're going to grab that time and we're going to push it into beat frames, which is an array we're going to be using later to actually cut each of our pieces of footage. So if you want to change the frequency or something of how often it cuts, this is the main place to do it here. You can mess around with this number, even maybe set up a window in here to select it, but that's basically how it's going to find where we cut. It's going to take all of the data we've calculated here, and it's going to check if it passes our threshold test. All right, we're just about done with our detect blocks function. Outside of our if statement here, we're going to go 3 brackets down, and we're going to set the current second equal to itself plus second. And then finally, right before we end this function, we're going to return our beat frames array, or all of the times we're going to cut the video. So now if we go back up here, our cut points is now going to be equal to our beat frames. The next thing we need to do is actually grab our footage to cut it. Now that we have the information of how we're going to cut it, we need something to cut. So I'll create a variable called AV array, which just stands for audio video array, or video array in this case. And we're going to set this equal to a function that we're about to make called collect footage. We don't need to pass any variables through this, and it's a fairly straightforward function. I'll go ahead and minimize these so we can see a bit better. And I'm going to create our function called collect footage. And first thing inside of here, we'll set up a variable called video array. And this is just going to hold all of the video files we find. And the way we're going to do this is run a for loop through all of our project items up here. So we'll create a variable, just I, set it equal to 1. And while I is less than or equal to our app.project.num items, we're going to increment I by 1. The first thing we need to actually check is if our include images checkbox is selected. Because if we come across an image and it's not selected and we put it in our video array, it's going to mess things up and the user is going to be wondering why they have images with their video. So the first thing inside of our for loop, we're going to add an if statement. And inside of that if statement, we're going to check our include images checkbox here. We're going to check the value and check if it's equal to 0. And while we're at it, we're going to make a second one here for if it's not. And we'll set that one equal to 1. So this is if we don't want to include images, and this is if we want to include images. Inside of the first one, we'll add another if statement, and we're going to check if app.project.item_i, or the current item, has video is true, and that app.project.item_i.duration is greater than 1, which basically means it's not an image because images do not have a duration really. And we'll do one more check just to make sure. We'll also say if not, if app.project.item_i instance of a comp item. So this is going to check if it's not an instance of a comp item. And then we're going to do something if it's that. If that is the case, we're going to take our video array and just push the current item. Then if we do have the include images selected, what we're going to do is check a couple of things inside of an if statement here. The first thing we'll check is if app.project.item_i has video equals true. So if it has video, it's either a video or an image. And if app.project.item_i.duration is greater than 1. And then we can just copy the last one up here because we're just checking for video real quick. And app.project.item_i is not an instance of a comp item. So this is covering the video basis. I'm going to cover all this in parentheses here. And then we're going to also set an or statement and end the parentheses that we opened up over there. So this first one's going to be checking for video. The or is going to also check for images. So for this, we're going to check if app.project.item_i has video is true, and app.project.item_i has audio equals false, and app.project.item_i.duration is equal to 0, which is defining of an image. And finally, app.project.item_i.parent folder does not equal the solids folder. So although we made that variable a long time ago, it does come in handy because if we check if something has video, doesn't have audio, and has a duration of 0, it could be a solid or a shape layer inside of our solids folder. So we're just double checking that. So now I've got our checks in line here. Again, we're just simply going to type in video array and we're going to push the current item. And then finally, because we're setting AV array equal to this function, we need to return our footage. So we'll go right above the closing bracket for our function here, and we're going to return our video array. All right, so we're getting really close here. We have one more function to write where we add the videos and adjust their sizes and things like that. But let's go ahead and run this just to see how it's working. So I run the script, select a song, edit speed, and click on edit. One issue I noticed is up here I said audio group down rather than audio drop down. So now let's try it. And we also need to change it to project.items rather than just item. So now if we run it, it's going to generate our comp with an audio layer and our audio amplitude. And if we want to see if we're getting the variables correctly, what we can do is say alert the cut points, and then we'll alert the AV array just to see if we're getting everything right here. So we'll run it again and wait for the alerts. So here are all of our cut points we've received: frame 41, frame 77, etc. And then these are the number of footage items we've detected, which now we can use in our final function to add the videos. So I'll go ahead and remove these alerts here. And underneath our AV array, we're going to set up a for loop. And we're going to run through this the number of times we're cutting the video, because that's basically equal to the number of clips we need. So we'll set up a variable, call it p, set it equal to 0, and while p is less than our cut points.length, increment p equal to itself plus new length. And I should set up new length really quick. We'll say var new length, and what we're going to set this equal to is math.round. And we're going to round our speed slider.value. So whatever this is set to, this is going to be our incrementer for when we're going through our footage. And this reminds me, these should all be math.round. Alright, so inside of here, we're basically going to run through each time we have a cut point. And for this, we're going to go into a function called add videos. And we're actually passing through quite a few arguments into here. The first one is our comp. Second is our cut points. Then our value for a second, our AV array with all of our footage, P, which is our current index, as well as new length. And then right outside of here, I'm going to add an alert, because once we've done this, everything is going to be done. So we're just going to say generated successfully. Alright, so let's go ahead and write our final function here. Go below our collect footage function. And I may have lied, there might be one more function, but it's an easy one. So we'll create a function called add videos, and we're going to get the same variables here, our comp, call this our beat frames rather than our cut points. Grab a second, our video array, index, and our new length. And inside of here, we'll start with two variables, our temporary index and our layer duration. So the first thing we'll do is set our temporary index up. For this, we're going to grab math.floor, and inside of here, we're going to generate a random number. So we'll say math.random, and we're going to multiply that by our video array and its length minus 1. And to that, we're going to add 0. So this will generate a random number between 0 and the length of our array, which coincides to different pieces of footage. So now that we have our temporary index, we're going to grab our comp, the layers inside of it, and we're going to add a layer. The layer we're going to add is going to be in our video array, and the index is going to be our temp index. So basically setting a random video and adding it. Then we're going to set up something called fix scale, and through this we're going to pass our composition. And this is going to be a function that fixes any scale problems we have, like if a layer is too small, it'll scale it up, and if it's too big, it'll scale it down. So we'll pass through our comp object here, and we'll start off with a few variables, my rect, my scale, and my new scale. My rectangle is going to be equal to our first layer in the comp, or the one we just added here, and we're going to use the function sourceRect at time. And this is going to get us some data about our footage, which we're going to say the time is 0 and false to return nothing. My scale is going to be equal to that same layer, and we're going to grab the scale property and grab the value. And then my new scale is going to be equal to my scale times math.min. The first value we're going to pass through is our comp.width divided by my rect.width. And our second value is going to be our comp height divided by my rect.height. So basically what this is going to do is grab the new scale that the footage needs to be to fit the comp appropriately. And then finally we need to set the scale to the new scale. So we'll grab the first layer again, set the scale property, and set the value to my new scale. Alright, back in our function add videos, we're going to go below our fixed scale comp. And this next one is optional. If you want your audio on your footage to be muted, I just like to grab the layer and set audio enabled equals false. But you can always randomize this or set them all to true, just depends on your needs. And now the important part is to cut our footage. We need to cut it so it matches our beat frames. So we'll grab our layer duration property here and set that equal to our layer we just added, its out point, so when it ends, minus the same layer, its start time. So this is basically setting a random variable equal to the actual duration of our footage. Now we're going to grab our layer we just added, the video layer, and we're going to set up the start time We're going to grab it again and set up the endpoint. For the start time of the video, we're going to set this equal to our beat frames, the current index divided by a second. Because After Effects time and scripting doesn't deal with frame time, we're going to convert it to second time. So whatever p-value we're at here, we're going to grab that cut point and divide it by a second and set it equal to the start time of our video. And then we'll go ahead and close this in parentheses. So we have our beat frames index divided by a second, and we're going to want to subtract math.floor, math.random times our layer duration plus 0. And the reason we're doing this is to add some randomness to it. We're going to adjust the start time just to make it a little bit different and make sure that we're not reusing the same clips and the same portions of clips. For the endpoint, we're just going to set it to our beat frames index divided by second. And now we just need to set up the out point, but there can be some issues with the out point. Let's say we had a first piece of footage here that wasn't quite long enough to make it to our cut point right here. Well, we need to check, and if it's not, re-go through our add videos function. So below our endpoint that we set, we're going to set up an if statement as well as the else. We're going to check if our current layer we just added, if its out point is less than our beat frames, and the index of our beat frames is going to be index plus new length divided by second. So if the out point of our layer doesn't quite reach the cut point that we set up, then we need to actually remove that layer. So we'll grab comp.layer1, and we'll say remove. And then we're going to actually go back through the adds video function, and we need to pass through our comp, beat frames, the second, video array, the index, and the new length. So basically, again, if our video doesn't quite reach out to our cut point, we need to get rid of that layer and try again. However, if it's not one of those cases and we can cut the video and it will still be within length, then we're going to grab our layer and set the out point to our beat frames, and again, index plus new length divided by second. And we also need to have a check for images. So we'll set up an if statement in our else, and we'll say if the current layer .source.duration is equal to 0, basically saying if we go to our current layer, check the source over here, and that duration is 0 or equal to an image, then we're going to want to set up a function called random scale. And inside of here, we're going to pass through our comp.layer1, comp.layer1.endpoint, and comp.layer1.outpoint. Now this is just a bonus little thing that we've added in. The random scale will basically apply keyframes to your images to make them animated. So let's go ahead and create this actual, I promise, last function. So we'll create a function called random scale, and inside of here we're going to pass through, let's see, our layer, our endpoint, and our outpoint, which we pass through here. Inside of here we're going to set up a variable called random, which will set equal to math.round, and we'll just say math.random. We'll set up a var called scale factor, and this is just going to be how we're going to scale it. So if it's set to 100% scale, and we have a scale factor of 1.15, it's going to set the scale to up to 115%. And now we're going to check our random number. We're going to have two checks, whether it's 1 or 0. So we'll say if random is equal to 0, and if random is equal to 1. If it's 0, what we're going to want to do is scale things down. And if it's 1, we're going to want to scale things up. All right, so we'll start off by saying our current layer is equal to layer, and we're going to set up some variables to set up our keyframes here. We'll say key property, and that's going to be equal to our current layer, and the property is going to be the Adobe transform group, and the property Adobe scale. Now you might notice I'm using Adobe transform group and Adobe scale rather than just property scale. The reason for doing that is because this is multilingual supported. I don't know why I didn't change it up there, but it should work in all languages. Then we'll say two keys equals 2, which is just going to be the number of keyframes we need. We're going to have a variable called add these keys, and this is going to be an array equal to our in point and our out point. These are our two keys we're going to add. Then we're going to have a variable called current scale equal to our current layer property transform and the property scale. And we're going to want to grab the index of the first value. It doesn't really matter because everything's going to be uniformly scaled here. So you could grab the first or second value if it was a 3D layer. Then we'll grab a variable called scale keys, set that equal to something in brackets here. And this is going to be how we're going to scale things. So the first value is going to be our current scale times our scale factor. Because we're scaling down, the first key we want is going to be with our scale factor applied. And the second value is going to be the current scale times the scale factor again, and then just 100 because we don't really have 3D layers here. Then we'll create one called scale keys 2, and inside of here we're just going to put in our current scale, and 100. So this is going to go from our current scale times our factor down to the original scale. And then finally, let's go ahead and create a variable called store keys. And this is going to be in brackets our scale keys 2 and 100. Now below all of these variables we just made, we're going to create a for loop to run through and apply these keyframes. We're just going to say var I is equal to 0, and while I is less than 2 keys, I++, or increment by 1. And inside of here, we'll grab our key property, which references our scale here. And we're going to want to set the value at time. The first values are going to be the times. So we're going to grab add these keys, index I. And the second argument are the values. So we're going to grab the store keys, index I. All right, now we can go ahead and copy all of this code here. And I'm just going to paste it in random 1. The only difference is going to be the scale keys and scale keys 2. We're basically going to swap them. And congratulations, if you've made it this far, hats off to you. This should be the finished form. This should be the finished form of the script here. Let's go ahead and test it a few times. Grab a song and edit speed, click on edit. And as you can see, we didn't get a message saying generated successfully because there is a video layer here at the end that is going to cause some trouble. But for the most part, it's edited just fine. All the layers are scaled correctly. And if we go ahead and include any images, it's going to include all of them. So I recommend keeping include images off because I must have messed up somewhere in there. But hopefully you get the general idea of the script. I know it's been a long tutorial, almost an hour long. So thank you for sticking around, guys. One more note is you could add implementation somewhere in here maybe when you add the videos. You could go into a function like apply effect. And you could have a list of effects that you can apply to video and apply that to any random videos. But that's it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I know it's been a long tutorial, but I've been wanting to make this for a while because I've been messing around with this script for weeks now, and I thought it was time to share it. So make sure you hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed the video, and make sure you hit the bell button right next to it to be notified when new videos are coming out. And that's going to do it for this video. I'm going to go get some water because I've been talking for an hour straight. Thanks again for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.